Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining this Biotron Investor webinar. I'm Rudy Michelson of Monsoon Communications. Today's webinar follows the market update lodged yesterday. Leading the webinar is CEO and Managing Director Michelle Miller. Before we begin, let me point out that you can submit questions using the Q&A function, and we'll get to them after the presentation. I'll now hand over to Michelle Miller to lead the presentation.
Thanks, Rudy. And thank you to everybody who's watching this, attending the webinar live, and also welcome to those who may be viewing this after the event. I'm really pleased today to be able to update you on Biotron and also on Cedarex, the company that we acquired late last year, and happy to answer any additional questions. Some have been given to us, before the webinar started, and there'll be an opportunity for, as Rudy said, for questions to be delivered afterwards, and I'll address them at the end of this session. So standard forward-looking statements. So I think just to, for people who may not be familiar with Biotron, or certainly with our updated story, at the end of last year, Biotron, which had primarily been an antiviral company for a number of years, expanded its drug portfolio with the acquisition of Cedarex Limited. Cedarex was a public unlisted company that has next generation general anesthetic that's late stage, as well as other potential indications in the neurocognitive, neuroscientific space. And we liked the Cedarex story, we liked the Cedarex technology, and believe that the general anesthetic in particular provides potential fast, low-risk path to commercialization with access and exposure to a very large global marketplace. I should say that Biotron's antivirals, the work on that is continuing. I'll mention HIV along the way, but we're really focusing right now on hepatitis B, and people may have seen the announcement that we put out yesterday with some updated data, and I'll talk about Hep B a bit later on as well. And I think that, Biotron has a range of expertise in drug development, and our main focus is making sure we target indications that have large unmet medical needs with some near-term commercial prospects, as well as a portfolio of medium and longer-term commercial outcomes for the benefit of shareholders. So just to introduce or remind people about the Cedarex opportunity. So Biotron aims to, with the Cedarex technology, to relaunch a new reformulated, safer general anesthetic agent. The drug itself, the original active ingredient, had been on the market in the UK and in the 70s and 80s, and had 50% of daycare procedure market in the UK. So there's a lot of safety data on this product, and we know that it is a product that was very well regarded previously. The active ingredient is alfaxalone, that's the API, and it's been a major use previously of anesthetics in humans. And I should say still actually the major general anesthetic that's used in animals in the veterinary market. Alfaxalone is used worldwide, I think in just about is the major general anesthetic in animals. The opportunity arose because of the original formulation of alfaxalone had been combined with a particular solubilizing agent that was found to be problematic, and that caused its removal from the market by Glaxo back in the 80s. But the actual alfaxalone itself was extremely safe. So the new technology that's been developed is replacing the original solubilizing agent, which is called Cremophor, basically like castor oil, which caused allergic reactions, and swapping that out for a very safe, widely used solubilizing agent. It's a cyclodextran that's already been approved by the FDA and the EMA. So we now have a product that's well formulated. We have formulation and use patents worldwide, and believe that this gives us a potentially fast path to market. The product itself, Cedarex, has several advantages over the existing main general anaesthetics that are in use, propofol and fluorines, fewer neurocognitive adverse events, as well as cardiovascular events that are linked with current anaesthetics. And in particular, has particular benefit in particular populations, those who are over 60, those who have might have other cardiovascular indications or other neurological issues. And really, the growth of the general anaesthetic market in general is being driven by the need for by expanding market due to an aging population. There's a lot more procedures being done as people age. And there's also an ongoing need for better anaesthesias in the ICU market and in people with brain injuries. So in terms of, just to set the scene, why do we need another general anaesthetic? You know, the main one out there is propofol. Most people would have had this when they've had any daycare procedures. The issue is that it's a known problem that within a few minutes of general anaesthesia, you get a very rapid reduction in blood pressure with propofol or the fluorines. And, you know, that can be associated then with some less than ideal outcomes from the general anaesthetic, and can also cause an increase in hospital stays and increased risk of stroke and kidney failure. In addition to a very rapid reduction in blood pressure with propofol, you get some effects on respiration and airway. And reduction of oxygen, of course, is a risk factor in anaesthetic and with obvious outcomes, negative outcomes in terms of risk of heart attacks and brain damage. The other problem is something that I hadn't been aware of previously, and maybe others who have older relatives or may have experienced this themselves, is the post-operative, post-anaesthesia decline in cognition. So it's quite a common thing, especially as people age. They're coming out of anaesthesia. There's this really severe, can be a severe marked reduction in cognitive ability. Sometimes that's quite short term, but in a number of people that can actually be quite severe and can continue for some period of time, days, if not longer, after the anaesthesia. And that means that obviously bad outcomes for patients, also means extended stays in hospitals, sometimes in ICUs, and the costs associated with that. As you said, that the regulators and the FDA have a black box warning on propofol for use in pediatrics. So the other key thing is the original drug was called althezin. That was alfaxalone mixed with cremofol, the solubilizing agent. And as we said, that had held 50% of the daycare market procedures in the UK, in the EU and the UK in the 70s and 80s, with many millions of people administered with the agent. But Glaxo voluntarily withdrew the product from market after about 15 years due to some events with severe anaphylaxis. Subsequently, that was found to be nothing due to the active ingredient alfaxalone, but was due to the cremofol agent. So the solution that has been developed, Cedarex, is a safer anaesthetic. So it's taken alfaxalone and it has taken care of the side effects from the previous solubilizing agent by combining it with the cyclodextrin. And as I've said, the advantages are due to alfaxalone has neuroprotective properties. It stimulates a particular pathways in the brain with brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And that means you get an increased level of neuroprotection in the brain, which you don't get with propofol. And in addition, there's improved cardiovascular outcomes. You don't get the rapid reduction, such severe changes in blood pressure and respiratory suppression. There's a few other things which might not seem important, but they are. No sticking on administration, like really propofol being the way that it's delivered, and the agent itself is a bit more problematic. And having we believe that Cedarex in particular will reduce patient recovery times, and of course with hospitals and insurance aspects, wanting better outcomes, we all do better outcomes for patients, means that it's likely to bring cost improvements in the hospital settings. It's a nice market. It's a growing market. This schematic here shows that 64% of the market share for anaesthetics are currently propofol and fluorines. Fluorines are masks with a gas, and as I said, the demand is a growing market that's being driven by an aging population. There's a lot more hips and knees and ankles and whatever being replaced. There's a lot more cardiac procedures, and other things with the aging population. And also, of course, the ICU market, where propofol currently has 60% market share and is associated with several AEs in that indication. So Cedarex has really been designed, to be the ideal anaesthetic. So I should say that Cedarex has been through some clinical trials already, and if you compare it with the existing main agent, propofol, which is an injectable as well, and the gas fluorines, they're all pretty much the same in terms of doing what they're meant to do, getting somebody asleep quickly and keeping them asleep and getting them awake at the other end fast. But Cedarex has improved cardiovascular safety, the breathing, less damage to the brain. The other key thing to note is for the propofol is the way that it's prepared and mixed. It's actually like the ideal breeding ground for bacteria at room temperature. So there's actually always a risk of infection in this due to the actual formulation itself. It has to be handled very, very carefully, and there have been a number of adverse outcomes due to the having the how it's produced, having the bacteria, this milieu that the bacteria love. Whereas with the Cedarex formulation, that's certainly not the situation. The other issue, of course, with the fluorines is that it's a gas. And there's actually one of the major greenhouse gases. And this is something that after being used is just released out to the environment. There's a real pressure on healthcare systems to move away from the fluorines. At this point, we certainly do not expect any black box warnings in the way that propofol has, especially in pediatrics, and no environmental issues, of course, the way that fluorines have. Also, a side thing that propofol, toxicity in aquatic media is not great and doesn't readily degrade. So, overall, we believe that Cedarex has improved characteristics over the existing major competitors. So in terms of what's been done and the path to market, a phase 1 clinical trial that was completed comparing Cedarex with the with propofol. You can see here looking at cardiovascular depression, and on the start of anesthesia, the green is the propofol and the orange is the Cedarex drug. You see after administration, the systolic blood pressure very rapidly goes down. And there's a slight reduction, with Cedarex, but not to nearly the same extent. The heart rates are the same, but the other really key thing is looking at the diastolic blood pressure, where you can see there really is a significant difference, an improvement with Cedarex compared to propofol. A phase 2A, which was really a pilot phase 3, was then run. And so this trial, the pilot phase 3 was initially planned to be 40 patients, was actually stopped after 15 because the outcomes of the trials were so strong and so obvious, the difference of improvement between propofol and alfaxolone, that there was no need to continue on with the phase 3, as the data that came out from that trial showed that a full phase 3 would then be able to very clearly show what it needed to show, like no further information was going to be needed to support further development at that point in time. This trial, once again, was comparing alfaxolone with, or the Cedarex version of alfaxolone with its new agent, cyclodextrin, as the formulation agent, comparing it with propofol, and once again found safety improvements in terms of the cardiovascular. But this trial also looked at the cognition effects after 40 minutes after anesthesia, and found by those various measurements, and this has been published, there was a significant improvement with propofol compared to alfaxolone. So the aim at this point in time is, we have a drug that has alfaxolone, which has previously been on market in Europe. The formulation agent, the solubilizing agent, cyclodextrin, is also on market already with a number of other agents. So we believe there's potential to move very quickly to get this approved in the EU, UK. It's sort of known that the EU has said that if a license has previously existed, then there's potential for an abridged license application, which means a much less clinical data is needed to actually support a marketing approval. So there is a potential that we may not need a phase 3 trial to get approval. We are currently working now with an international regulatory consultancy group based in the UK. We're working with them to make a submission to the EMA, to the scientific committee, to clarify the regulatory pathway to determine whether a phase 3 trial is needed or not, and if it is, the sort of type of trial that would need to be. And so we have clarity on the timing of being able to get marketing approval in the EU, UK. So that's currently in progress. We're working closely with the group. A response is expected from the EMA to the questions we're putting to them in July this year. And there won't be much information we can really put out on the way during this process. This is underway. I think that it's a very clear pathway to near-term revenue in the EU, UK. In the US, alfaxolone, the original drug artesunate, was not ever, didn't ever receive approval in the US, not because it was not back, it was just for whatever reason, Glaxo, the original developers, did not file for approval with the FDA. Previously, Cedarex has filed a pre-IND with the FDA to determine whether this abbreviated 505(b)(2) pathway, which basically means you can reference published literature and existing files to support safety and efficacy of a product, would be suitable. And the FDA response is yes, that the 505(b)(2) pathway, which references published literature, is an appropriate pathway for this product in the US. So while we're focused currently on the EMA submission, because it's a clearer, faster process, because the drug was already approved there previously, we are also currently exploring the options for progressing a path to approval in the US in parallel with that. So throughout this next, through to the end of this current year, there are 2 key milestones for SEDARX, and these were really set out as part of the acquisition of SEDARX last year, and they're certainly set out in more detail in the November 25 prospectus when we raised capital to support this transaction, and I refer you to that if you're looking for additional information. So the first of all is getting the European regulatory pathway guidance by 31st of July, and that is, as I said, in progress, on schedule. We're pleased with the progress we're making with that, working with very experienced people who are working with us to get the responses we need in the timeframe we need from the EMA. In addition to that, we are working on a new indication. Now, this is something, unfortunately, we can't talk in a lot of detail about the indication due to patent positions. It's really important that we can't talk about the indications until we get some data and have filed appropriate robust patents with robust data. But there are some other really interesting neurological indications that we're looking to develop this product for, with a different type of formulation for a different type of delivery. This is blue sky. This is a whole new, while the general anesthetic is a short path to market, getting revenue, these new indications have a very long runways and very exciting, very large markets. So the key milestone is for the end of this year, but we're working on it now and certainly aiming to have information we can put out to the market as soon as we do have solid data locked up to support patent filings, to demonstrate the efficacy of a new formulation in a new animal disease model for this new indication. So that's in progress, it's on schedule, and I really look forward to being able to talk in more detail about this as the year goes on. Of course, Biotron's legacy programs are continuing. The main area we're focusing on right now is hepatitis B, and this is mainly being led by feedback from potential partners and feedback from the market. With hepatitis B, it's something we've worked on quietly for a while. It's not been one of our, out there, the frontline programs. We really wanted to make sure we ticked all the boxes, that we really understood what we were working with. We have developed a series of novel compounds. This is not BIT225. It's a totally different set of drugs. And the lead one of this is looking really nice in terms of its safety and that aspect. It has had shown, as we've put out in announcements, really very good activity against Hep B in various preclinical cellular and animal models, better than the tenofovir, which is a drug that's used to keep Hep B under control, but isn't part of a functional cure strategy. In particular, this drug, we like it because it's an oral drug, reduced levels of what's called cccDNA. There's a particular marker with Hep B that indicates that you need to be able to target this part of the virus if you're going to have a chance at really making significant changes to people in the long term. And at this stage, we are working towards a phase 1. Ideally, we'd like to develop this in combination with somebody else. There's a few other early stage Hep B agents, totally different mechanism of action, that are out there being developed. There's been a lot of failures. And to be able to co-develop this with one of these other agents is what we are working on behind the scenes. It's a huge market, over 2 billion people infected. In some cases, it's a blood-borne disease. In many parts of the world, in China and some other Asian countries and other areas, babies get infected at birth. So they're infected very early on, vaccination doesn't make much difference. It's already happened. And those people are at much higher risk of severe outcomes in terms of cirrhosis, liver failure, and liver cancer. Yesterday, we put out an announcement and some additional work with a virus called hepatitis delta. Now, this is not a virus that grows on its own. It's a satellite virus for hepatitis B. It needs hepatitis B to replicate. But people who are co-infected with delta virus, who are hep B positive, have a much higher risk and chance of developing viral hepatitis and getting cirrhosis and liver failure or cancer within a much shorter period of time. There's very limited treatment options. So our data that we've recently did in cell cultures showed that our drug also targets and can reduce hepatitis delta virus. Why we're excited by this is there's one product out there at the moment that actually Gilead bought Recludex a few years ago for this indication. Now, this is a Recludex product. It has other names, of course, more complicated scientific marketing names. Basically, it's a 47, 48 amino acid, a really big product. It's an injectable, daily injections with bad inflammation at the site. It's expensive. There's supply chain issues. The FDA has not approved this due to their concerns over the manufacturing and delivery of it. It is approved in the EU. So there's a real opening for a drug that's a small molecule, daily, oral tablet, which will do the same thing that targets hepatitis B and delta virus. So we're pretty excited by the latest data and the fact that it opens up an opportunity in a really hard to treat hepatitis B population. So I think just before I move on from this, just to mention, I'm not going to talk about HIV today. We're actually, we're not doing any HIV clinical trial work at the moment. Our focus has been and continues to be on finding a home for that with a partner. HIV is a tricky one right now. I think we've all seen the rhetoric in many areas around vaccines and the anti-vaccine aspects in some parts of the world. And that's sort of flown on to a certain extent with infectious diseases. The problem with HIV is how do you prove some people are cured of HIV, and the need to show surrogate markers. And there's a lot of disagreement within the pharmaceutical industry as well as within regulators of what biomarkers are actually needed. So we are continuing dialogues with different groups. It's not straightforward and it's not simple. When we have something to update the market on in terms of the HIV program and its the next stages for that, we will do so. But at this point, we're not actively doing any more trials in this space, and we certainly have indicated that previously. So financial summaries, we are in a strong position at the moment. And when we were doing with the terms of the Ceterex acquisition, we completed a 2.5 million capital raising. There was a 2-tranche placement as well as a rights issue. So at the end of last year, end of that reporting period, it had 1.6 million in the bank. Subsequent to that, we've received another 878,000 on top of that, with filling the shortfall from the rights issue, which is now fully complete. So we currently have funds on hand to complete the work that we're proposed. That's the work with the regulatory agencies, which is never not fast or cheap, but matters, and that will give us clarity of next stage and whether a trial is needed, and to also develop take this for the new indication, do all the work that's needed for that, for the formulation, getting it through an animal model and getting the data that we need to support patents, and to then move that on to the next stage of development with a product that's already, as I said, the active ingredients being on market, safety information, all of that's already known. It's just showing the potential of it for these other new indications, as well as continuing the work on the Hep B program. As well, since the end of last year, we've strengthened our board. Dr. Paul Kasian has come on board as a non-exec director. He has a PhD in microbiology. He spent many years in funds management at HSBC. He brings a very nice depth of corporate governance and knowledge and experience to our board. In terms of our outreach, we are continuing to engage with potential partners across all the programs. Like, we've been focused on the antivirals, but we're letting people know about the general anesthetic and what we're doing with that. And to say that Biotron always has had a very disciplined approach to its R&D programs. We're very focused on delivering key value-adding short-term milestones for the Cedarex and Biotron programs throughout this year, with the aim of generating increased share price, which we all desperately want, and outcomes for shareholders. So already sort of mentioned this, but just to have it on one slide so you can see the outlook. We've got the Cedarex milestones, which is the regulatory guidance in July. That's well underway, demonstrating efficacy for a new indication, and that's underway. The Hep B, we have some recent data. We're now completing additional preclinical studies to show that that the lead drug we've chosen is suitable for progressing to the next stage of formal tox studies and safety studies, and investigating scale-up process development and manufacturing of that product for a clinical trial. So in summary, I think that we're really excited by the Cedarex and our prospects Biotron's prospects going forward. We really believe it opens up significant development and commercial opportunities for Biotron. It's a nice story. It's a really nice product with Cedarex, and it opens up exposure to a new multi-billion-dollar market within a short period of time. The product has already shown in clinical trials that it has significant safety and cognitive advantages over the existing standard general anesthetics. There's improved patient outcomes, and of course, economies in terms of insurers and hospital administrators is really key. And we believe that this product will really meet a sweet spot in that space, and especially in at-risk patient populations who are elderly, who have head trauma or at cardiovascular risk. We have existing patents across the Cedarex formulations, as well as some manufacturing patents on that. There's good existing clinical data. There's a whole portfolio of data around the safety itself of alfaxolone, the active ingredient, which we don't have to regenerate. That exists. We're pursuing the actively, aggressively pursuing fast-track regulatory pathways. The additional indications in other spaces are really exciting. Very enthusiastic about being able to talk to you more about that in future webinars. And the Hep B, we believe, is also a really exciting prospect still in the antiviral space, and look forward to being able to bring more information on that as that progresses in coming months. And I think that that's basically it. If anybody has questions, etc., happy to.
Thanks, Michelle. We'll now move on to the Q&A, and if you have any questions, you can continue to submit them using the Q&A function. We did have 3 pre-submitted questions, and I'll go through those first.
Sure.
First one, what positive effects, if any, have been observed regarding BIT-HBV001 on bone marrow health during your clinical evaluations, and how might this influence overall patient outcomes?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So I should also point out that the Hep B is still preclinical. It hasn't been in people yet. The issue around bone marrow health and hematopoiesis is actually a really important one in hepatitis B, because there's evidence that Hep B can infect stromal cells and other hematopoietic stem cells. It's difficult to assess that in vitro. It will be something that will be considered in a clinical setting when we get into patients. That's what I can really say on that. We're aware of that. but it's not something that can be assessed until we get into the clinic.
And there are a couple of questions. I think you've addressed these in the presentation itself, but about HIV. Let me read them out anyway. Is the company still researching our HIV drug potential? And has there been any interest from outside companies in doing any deals on HIV drug to bring it to market or integrate in other drugs to increase treatment?
So I think I've said what we're doing with it at the moment, which is we are out still talking to partners, talking with academic pharma groups and whatever around the world who are also have different reservoir assays to work out, well, what is, from all of the data we've generated, the key question, does it lead to a cure? How can we best assess that? In which additional assays than we've already done? So that is something we're actively out there investigating, but we're not undertaking any additional trials. And right at this point, we're not spending additional cash on that program.
EMA, we on track to receive confirmation before 30th of June 26?
Well, it's actually the 31st of July. If you read the information, the milestones that were out were set for 31st of July. And as per my presentation, we are on track to receive that information in July. There's meetings and things, timelines that we are meeting to get this in front of the EMA with their schedule to be able to get the response within that time frame. So yes.
What is the funding prioritisation of the development activities across the portfolio?
Yeah, look, it's really, I think that we actually did set this out in a lot of detail in the prospectus, and once again, in November, I think it's 17th of November 25, that's on our website in the announcements, and it had with the funds that were raised, where the funds would be spent. But pretty much, some majority, it's probably split, not quite 50-50. Some of the money, of course, is going to corporate activities, keeping the company going. It's costs associated with being listed, etc. But SEDARX at the moment, probably more than 50% of the funds are going towards that, because we're very aware of the timeframes, very aware of the milestones that we need to deliver that were set out as terms of the acquisition of SEDARX. So, the budgets were set up around the expenditures as predicted in the prospectus, and we're sticking to that really. So it's like more than probably 60% SEDARX in terms of the R&D activities, 60 or more percent to SEDARX, and 40% or maybe a bit less to the antivirals at this point in time.
There have been no further questions submitted, so I'll hand back to Michelle for concluding remarks.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you very much to everybody. I'm really pleased to update you with where we're at. I think that we have made very good progress in terms of the SEDARX technology with the general anaesthetic, in terms of getting this to the regulators in a very short period of time, in terms of progressing the other indications, once again, very actively working on that. And we look forward to bringing you updates as and when they're available. Thank you.